You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of April 4th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we have the perfect hedge against the massive disruptions that Trump's insane trade war is about to cause. It's The Professional Left with Drip Glass and Blue Gal.
Bosco's the coin that's shining bright. Jump on in and see the light. Safe and sound, it's here to stay. Bosco's the future, come today. Bosco, it's the name to know. Crypto power with a jazzy glow. Stack it up, watch your fortune grow. Join the Bosco ride, let's go.
In these wild economic times, let Boscoin be your digital bridge to wealth, clear skin, and a clean, musky scent that'll drive the ladies crazy.
Revolutionize your financial paradigm with Bosco, the disruptive, decentralized ecosystem leveraging quantum-resistant blockchain architecture. Bosco's proprietary neural consensus algorithm transcends traditional DeFi limitations, unlocking unprecedented liquidity dynamics.
Our hyper-deflationary tokenomics framework ensures sustainable growth, while our AI-powered smart contracts seamlessly integrate with the metaverse economy. Bosco isn't merely an investment, people. It's a transformative digital asset class redefining wealth creation.
Early adopters access our exclusive staking protocol with compounding yield optimization. Don't remain tethered to legacy financial infrastructure while visionaries architect tomorrow's economy. Bosco, democratizing prosperity through algorithmic sovereignty. Join the financial revolution. Bosco could stand for Beyond Ordinary Systematic Crypto Optimization, but it doesn't. It stands for Buy Our Shitty Crypto, okay?
And we do that in celebration of Liberation Day, April 2nd, Liberation Day, although I prefer Liberation Day, which, as all of you cosmology and astronomy nerds out there know, liberation comes from the Latin word librare, meaning to balance or sway, is an apparent oscillation or wobble of a celestial body. So, wobbling and swaying. Or perhaps my favorite is Libation Day, because this is the day the global financial markets began to drink very heavily because a corrupt, incompetent Republican administration has announced that it's launching a war of liberation on the basis of a great big whopping lie.
Do you think the American people are prepared for a long, costly, and bloody battle with significant American casualties?
Well, I don't think it's likely to unfold that way, Tim, because I really do believe we will be greeted as liberators.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the last corrupt, incompetent Republican administration announcing its catastrophically stupid war of liberation. That was 22 years ago, almost to the day, March 16th, 2003. This is the current corrupt, incompetent Republican administration announcing its catastrophically stupid war of liberation. This time, it's a trade war.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
And why is Trump doing this? Because he's nuts.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike.
Because he's a deeply damaged, paranoid liar. And the reaction from the financial markets was swift and clear. By the time the Dow Jones had been open for 5 minutes, it had already dropped something like 1,500 points, and over $1.65 trillion had been wiped out from the U.S. stock market. And here's a fun tweet from Donald John Trump, dated November 6, 2012. Quote, "If the Dow drops 1,000 points in 2 days, the president should be impeached immediately." Unquote.
Couldn't agree more.
Also, way to go. Also, if you want to peer into the future to know what the response from this corrupt, incompetent Republican administration will be, once the scale of this disaster becomes clear, all you need to do is look into the past and see the response of that last corrupt, incompetent Republican administration to their disaster.
I feel very strongly about what's going on over there now, just as I did when we made the decision to go into Iraq in '03. I believed in it then. I look back on it now. It was absolutely the right thing to do.
So no regrets about Iraq?
I think we made exactly the right decisions.
Expect every Republican you know to lie, to deflect, to what about, and both sides. For precisely the same reasons they lied, deflected, what about it, and both sidesed as the Bush administration was coming apart. Because they never gave a damn about debts or deficits or what was actually going on in Iraq or anywhere else around the world. All they cared about, and all they still care about, is not looking stupid and foolish and wrong. And they're willing to bury the past to do it.
Yeah, using legacy media bulldozers to help them out. The various debacles of the Bush administration humiliated them, which was at least half the reason why they despised Barack Obama, because he was that constant black Democratic reminder that they had been played for chumps. And that's at least half the reason they elected Trump, to avenge themselves on the people who were right, because the mere act of being right makes aggressively stupid people very, very angry. Telling someone who believes that 2 and 2 is 5 that they're wrong, that the answer is 4, well, they'll just wave that away as some sort of George Soros woke mind virus stuff. You know, that's just what crazy liberals think. But when the stupid math that they've built their entire life around and mocked anyone who says different, when that fails publicly, it's absolutely unbearable. They cannot stand it, especially if it's us 2 + 2 = 4 snooty elite liberals pointing it out.
That's when the legacy media tone police arrive and blame liberals for making the stupids feel so angry that they just had to vote for the corrupt, brain-damaged, bigoted rapist with 39 convictions. And so here we are, all trying to figure out how to mitigate the damage the bigots and imbeciles are inflicting on the country.
Yeah, all in the same boat. And one of the through lines of Cory Booker's amazing record-breaking filibuster was a reminder that this was literally all he could do. It's all any elected Democrat has the power to do anymore. Find a place to make a moral stand against the depravity of the Republican Party. The time to take substantive action to stop this was, literally any time before Election Day 2024. Republicans could have thrown Newt Gingrich out of the party. They could have thrown Rush Limbaugh out of the party. They could have stopped this anytime they wanted. And the last stop on this railroad was Election Day 2024. On Election Day 2024, 75 million of us understood the assignment. We are the ones who knocked on the doors and donated and wrote postcards to voters, and we voted accordingly. But the stay-at-homers and the I just can't deciders and the price of eggers and the I just can't vote for Genocide Joe and I just can't vote for Kamala either, those people, they're the ones who chose to hand the entire government over to the Republicans and strip the Democrats of any power to change any of this. This is on them.
I think it's really important to recognize that Republican voters rely on Democrats to protect their Social Security and Medicare.
Yes.
And then they don't vote for them.
Right. No, they get.
This is what happens.
They get a free shot. It's Republicans have been taught that they are free to fuck up anything they want and that someone else will clean it up.
Yeah. And Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mitch McConnell said Democrats will fix this.
Right.
What an abnegation of your responsibility.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to be responsible because he knows
he's a Republican.
Yeah. And now we're left in the position where you shoot the hostage. You have to shoot the hostage because now they run everything and they're by God going to take us over a cliff. And it's the people who decided to stay at home and bitch and be purity freaks and the rest of the Republican Party who put us here, who put the rest of the 75 million of us who knew better, who've been screaming from the rooftops not to do this. They're the ones who are dragging the rest of us off the cliff. So don't take your complaints to me. Take it to your friend who thought that Kamala, I just didn't understand her. I couldn't really trust her. I didn't know her very well. So I decided to vote for the rapist lunatic instead.
Or let the rapist win. Yeah.
And because you had 4 years of this guy, you know what he's like. And you had 4 more years of him lying and cheating and saying that January 6th was a patriotic act and the 2020 election was rigged. You fucking know better.
Where's Genocide Donald? Why aren't we talking about Genocide Donald?
And you and I were talking just before this about, when the laziest kid in school When the laziest kid in school fucks up and blows the big test because he couldn't bother to study, he couldn't be bothered to crack a book, he couldn't be bothered to pay any attention in class at all, because that's what we're all in together. We're all in this democracy class. That's not a failure of teacher messaging. That's a failure of the student not taking their job as a student seriously and just blowing it off and assuming everything's going to be okay. This is not a problem of democratic messaging. As I said on Blue Sky earlier today, the Allies didn't have a messaging problem. The Allies had a Nazi problem. And that's what we have. We have a Nazi problem. And you can't really message around that in a way that makes people who don't want to face it, because they don't want to look at that. They don't want to look it in the eye. Anyway.
Yep. And so once again, we're plunged into disaster by yet another corrupt, incompetent Republican administration. And here are some of the mile markers on the road to hell those people put us on. From the Associated Press, quote, mass layoffs are underway at the nation's public health agencies. The cuts include researchers, scientists, doctors, support staff, and senior leaders, leaving the federal government without many of the key experts who have long guided U.S. decisions on medical research, drug approvals, and other issues. The revolution begins today, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote on social media as he celebrated the swearing in of his latest hires,
and
unquote.
Sing it with me now. Your Republican neighbors and friends and churchgoers and family members voted for this. This is what they voted for. From NPR, quote, HHS layoffs hit Meals on Wheels and other services for seniors and the disabled, unquote.
From ABC News, quote, as President Donald Trump directs cuts of tens of thousands of federal government employees, among those laid off at America's health agencies are workers at a National Institutes of Health department focused on dementia research.
This is from NPR again. Quote, cultural groups across the U.S. told that federal humanities grants are terminated. Millions of dollars in previously awarded federal grants intended for arts and culture groups across the country are being canceled by the Trump administration, according to a National Endowment for the Humanities senior official who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they're not authorized to speak publicly, unquote.
From Wired, quote, the DOGE axe comes for libraries and museums. The Institute of Museum and Library Services has long received bipartisan support, but after years of trying, President Donald Trump has delivered it a crushing blow, unquote.
And from CBS, quote, layoffs across the U.S. surged 205% in March when compared with a year earlier, with last month's 275,240 job cuts fueled by widespread firings engineered by billionaire Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, according to outplacement firm Challenger, Gray & Christmas. March's layoffs represent the third highest monthly total ever recorded. Challenger said the two previous highest month totals were recorded in April of 2020 and May in 2020. Guess what was happening then? When more than 671,000 and 397,000 job cuts respectively were recorded due to the pandemic shuttering the U.S. economy, unquote.
And we're going to say it again. Never forget it was our Republican neighbors, colleagues, and family members who did this. This is what they voted for. And to push the Iraq war and Trump's trade war analogy just a little bit further, it took Bush and Cheney more than 3 years of escalating disastrous fuck-ups to get a majority of the country to decide that this was a terrible mistake. But it's taken Trump and Musk less than 3 months to get a whole lot of otherwise oblivious people to notice that things are going bad and getting worse. And I just want to go back to your messaging problem one more time.
Yeah.
Because, we weren't warned about any of this. The Democrats had 4 nights in prime time repeatedly telling you that Project 2025 was coming. They put up QR codes. Read about Project 2025. This is the plan. This is what's going to happen. And Donald Trump lied and said it isn't, and then went ahead and hired authors of Project 2025 for his director of management and the Office of Management and Budget is the author of Project 2025. And he's implementing each one of those items in that published book. This is not a messaging problem for Democrats.
No, there's also
this is an unwillingness to listen.
I am done with people giving these voters excuses that, they're very busy people, Blue Gal. They're very busy. They've got 19
They're deciding
jobs.
the future of the free world, and they're deciding wrong.
Well, and if you're
in a way that hurts everyone.
If you're busy now with your 9 jobs and you can't pay attention to anything or know what anyone's doing or know who the president is or what anyone's going to do when they get into office, but you decide to vote anyway, guess how busy you're going to be when Meemaws, Meals on Wheels, and Alzheimer care and Medicare or Medicaid is canceled. You're going to be a whole lot busier then, but you couldn't be bothered to pay attention, and that's on you. There is in all this, however, a little bit of good news.
Mm-hmm.
And that good news is because there were elections on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they weren't presidential elections and they weren't midterms, but there were a lot of local elections in a lot of places, and the results were pretty stark, I got to say.
Yeah.
Let's start with the stuff you'll probably already know about the newly elected Wisconsin State Supreme Court Justice Susan Crawford, and what turned out to be the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history. Thanks, Citizens United. Thanks, Republicans, where Elon Musk spent more money than we will ever see in our lifetimes, over $20 million on a single statewide race for the state Supreme Court, and he might as well have just piled that shit up in the town square and set it on fire for all the good it did him. This is from Pope Hat, who now identifies as Domestic Enemy Hat, and, we love him on the Twitter. Quote,
the blue sky, not the Twitter.
On the blue sky. I apologize. On the blue sky. Quote, something is fundamentally wrong with America when millions of dollars can't buy you a Wisconsin Supreme Court seat, the respect of your children, the silence of your baby mamas, or a functional penis implant, unquote.
Furthermore, Musk's example shows the way forward for Democrats running for office. You might remember a few years ago when no matter which Republican was running for what office, all of them said they were running against Nancy Pelosi and those awful Washington insiders. Mm-hmm. Republican mailers always featured the most unflattering picture of Pelosi available, superimposed over the face of their opponent, usually in scary black and white.
So very scary.
To whatever extent this worked, it was because Republicans had already spent decades and millions of dollars turning Nancy Pelosi into the witch in the closet and the boogeyman under the bed. Republican children were told they better be good or Nancy Pelosi will get you.
She'll get you. She'll come at you with her big bug eyes and her long fingernails. And they spent a shit ton of money making her into a monster and then running against her. Well, due entirely to the fact that Musk cannot keep his drug-addled conspiracy drunk mouth shut and has one of the biggest megaphones on earth, which he bought, and has more money than God. And Trump has given him an axe and turned him loose on the poor, on the infirm, and the aged. Musk has made himself into a monster. Congratulations. Yep. And by showing up in person in Wisconsin and dancing around in his cheesehead hat, illegally handing out $1 million checks and raving about how losing this election may spell the end of the human species, Musk made his grandiosity, his bloated ego, and his sociopathic contempt for anything the government does, he made all of that the story. Congratulations.
Yep. And you could see it in the national news about the Wisconsin elections, where they didn't even bother to mention Susan Crawford's opponent in the headline.
Yeah.
Because she lost so badly. Instead,
she won.
He lost so badly.
Yeah.
And he lost so badly. Instead, look at who they do mention. NBC's headline was typical. Quote, Susan Crawford wins Wisconsin Supreme Court race defying Elon Musk, unquote.
And on the postcards, we get a lot of postcards from Sangamon County Democratic Party, which we don't really need because we're going to vote for them anyway, but we do appreciate the content for our podcast.
And door to door. I mean, dropping stuff off at our door. There were a lot of volunteers going door to door. Yeah.
Delivering to us podcast content, which we do appreciate.
Which we're using right now.
If you look on the back of those things, we find the Democratic candidates and how awesome they are and what they're going to vote for. On the front, you find a picture of Trump and Musk looking like they're scheming to take your Meemaw's medications away from her.
Yeah, because that works.
That works. And it's true. And it happens to be true.
Happens to be true.
This is also true across the entire state. This is from the Chicago Tribune. Here's the headline. Illinois GOP suffered major election losses in suburbs that are critical for its rebuilding effort. This is a bit of a long article, but it's all about how this is happening all across Illinois. So Bear with me. Quote, 2 days before Tuesday's local elections, the Illinois Republican Party sent out an email to supporters declaring it to be a do-or-die moment for us. Die. That's what I said. The email was just another in a series of fundraising solicitations, but it may have been more accurately captured the importance of the election, which featured wide-ranging Democratic victories in the suburbs, critical for rebuilding a state GOP, already on the verge of irrelevance in Illinois politics, and reflecting voter angst over the early, tumultuous months, not years, months, of Republican President Donald Trump's second presidency. There was a broad rejection of what Donald Trump and the Republican Party stands for, and Illinois Democrats had perhaps one of the best nights we've ever had. You know who said that, Blue Gal?
I do.
He lives right down the block, or he does part of the time anyway. Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker said on an unrelated press call Wednesday from Mexico, where he is leading a state trade mission.
Yeah, he's doing trade missions with Mexico, folks.
Yep. Statewide, the Illinois Democratic Party said it backed 280 candidates in Tuesday's elections, and 222 or 79% of them were victorious. The governor attributed the results in Illinois to both organization among state Democrats and broader national pushback against Trump administration policies and government cuts being spearheaded by Trump-aligned billionaire Elon Musk. The anger felt in Illinois, as it is across the entire country, and that did play a role, there's no doubt, in turnout and the actual results, he said, in the government cost-cutting actions of Trump and Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. That is what Democratic messaging looks like.
Right. And I understand that people are upset about Republicans winning in Florida.
Yes.
Trump won those districts with 35%, and the Republican won with 10% by winning over 10%. The margin was that much smaller. Yeah. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you don't live in Florida, encourage your MAGA neighbors and friends to move to Florida.
Sure, go there.
Because MAGA should be in 3 states max.
Right, where they can be contained successfully.
Where they can be contained. And so we know there was a mass, migration from 2016 on of Republicans retiring to Florida to be closer to their cult leader. So move them all down there.
And if I can draw a quick analogy about Florida, in old style battles, shield wall battles, where you just had infantry versus infantry, and they're all holding shields and pushing against each other, pushing back and forth, pushing back and forth. That's what elections are. Two forces pushing back and forth against each other. If you're expecting a rout, if you're used to winning by 30% and you're winning by 10%, that means the enemy, your opposition, is now close enough where he can see your eyes.
Right.
He can stab a sword at your leg. He can jab you in the cheek. They were expecting routes, and they're getting really close elections, and that has got to scare the crap out of them, because that means they have to spend money defending everywhere because people fucking hate them.
Right. Mm-hmm. 2-term Aurora, Illinois Mayor Richard Irvin, a Republican, was defeated by Democrat-backed John Laish to lead the state's second largest city. But the real devastation came in dozens of township elections across the suburbs that saw Democrats flip power from Republicans, raising the question of whether the state GOP has fallen so low on the political depth chart that it will prevent any short-term rise to competitiveness in Illinois in a Trump 2.0 era. I want to make it clear, these are white suburbs.
Very much so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And white flight suburbs. Hmm? Democratic victories in the eastern side of DuPage County tell much of the tale. Addison Township was flipped from Republican to Democrat, including the ousting of GOP Supervisor Dennis Rebelletti. In neighboring York Township, the GOP lost the race for Township Supervisor and Highway Commissioner, as well as trustees. It's like the school commissioner up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They don't want privatized schools in Wisconsin. Further west, in DuPage's Milton Townships, voters swapped out the Republican leadership for Democrats. These are tiny local elections, and they don't want Trumpers running their counties and their townships. These results mark a seismic shift in local politics. Several townships in DuPage County that had never before elected a Democrat will now be represented by Democratic leadership, DuPage County Democrats said in a statement. The county's Democratic chair, Reed McCollum, called the voting a profound statement, adding that he expects Democrats, get this, will win all 49 contested township races across the county, unquote.
Yeah. And this is a much longer article, and if you can sneak in the back door of the Tribune, it's a great pleasure to read it because there's an awful lot of detail. And if you know Illinois politics at all, it was like, really? They flipped that? They flipped that?
Yeah.
That's the home of Pate Phillips. That's where these people, that's where the strongholds used to be. And there's still strongholds in a few places, but this is happening in Naperville. It's happening in the Elk Grove Township. It's in Homer, Glen, and Will County. But here is the money quote, the very end of the article, and this is the money quote. This is, quote, Pat Brady, a former state GOP chairman and Republican National Committee member who has opposed Trump's takeover of the party, said he still believed there was an opportunity for a Republican to win statewide in Illinois if they were in the socially moderate, fiscally conservative mode of the late Treasurer Judy Barr Topinka and former U.S. Senator Mark Kirk.
Both of those people are dead.
And here's the thing. Those are not the people that get invited to the Sangamon County Lincoln Day dinner to rile up the base. The base doesn't want to hear from Judy Barr. They may have fond memories of her. They may know her personally. They may have shared a bottle of scotch and chain smoked with her because she was abroad. She was kind of abroad. I kind of liked her. But they don't invite those people. They invite Charlie Kirk, not Mark Kirk.
Right.
And that's what the groundlings, that's what the base wants to hear. They don't have any time for these people.
Anyway, and they're not going to donate $200 for a chicken dinner.
No,
to hear dead Mark Kirk come up and talk about, socially moderate, fiscally conservative. Furthermore, none of these voters want fiscally conservative. It's going to affect their Social Security check and the ability to call Social Security if they're having a problem.
Right.
You're taking away their stuff.
Yeah. All they want to do is secede from the state, join Indiana. They hate Chicago. And, it's a bunch
be
of
white.
And be very white and get away from all the people from like us who are, using big words and stuff. Anyway, the article concludes, but the Trump nonsense does not work in Illinois, certainly not statewide, Brady said. The guy at the top, he's just out of control with tariffs, incorporating Greenland, everything. I think there's a lot of insecurity and fear, quite honestly, about what this president's going to do, he said. And that translates into how the Republican brand has been so diminished by him. I'm not sure it can be fixed, but it can't be fixed by a Trumpian candidate based in Illinois, unquote. I tell you, we know what the country looks like because we live among these people. If you want to know what's going on in the hearts and minds of people at the grassroots level, just ask us. We'll tell you. We also note that in all 72 counties in Wisconsin, our neighbors to the north, Democrats fared better than they did in 2024. Democrats did not win every county, of course, but every single county moved left. Every one.
Middle child takes full responsibility for that.
Well, she's
credit.
Amazing. Yeah.
I voted for all the winners. And let me say, the college students who have been really critical in these Supreme Court races over abortion and fair maps and issues that really matter locally. Mm-hmm. Getting these wins is, core memory building.
That's right.
For future elections.
Oh,
and remembering to show up. Yeah. Finally, we were worried about getting this underreported aspect of SignalGate story out before, SignalGate just slipped off the front page while Trump talks about having a third term. Fuck no. All the potential future book deals that Jeffrey Goldberg ruined by revealing this huge scandal right after it happened instead of waiting.
Exactly.
His selfish desire to report the news might have robbed future generations of books like In the Chat Room Where It Happened. That book Peter Baker would have written 2 years after the fact.
Or, Are You There, Jeff? It's Me, Margaret. The book Maggie Haberman would have written if Jeff Goldberg had waited 2 years and then told his story to Maggie Haberman.
I love this one. Pete Hegseth's book, If I Did It. And that's the book he would have written after he had finally been cashiered as Secretary of Defense.
Invisible Man, which Marco Rubio may still write this one.
Yeah. 10 Things I Hate About Europe by J.D. Vance, written under the pseudonym J.D. Scavenger.
And this one only works if you know who this guy is, but if you know who this guy is, it works very well. Dave Portnoy's complaint. The Barstool sports guy finally figures out that Trump has been playing him for a fucking chump. I'm sorry. That's a Freudian slip. And and leave it in.
I'm leaving it in.
Because they're synonymous.
Don't forget, Go Tell It on the Mountain, but first check to see if Jeffrey Goldberg is in the chat by Stephen Miller.
Yeah. However, breaking news, the SignalGate story will probably be with us for a while yet because according to Politico, I believe this is just yesterday or today, quote, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz's team regularly sets up chats on Signal to coordinate official work on issues including Ukraine, China, Gaza, Middle East policy, Africa, and Europe, according to 4 people who have been personally added to Signal chats. 2 of the people said they were in or have direct knowledge of at least 20 such chats. All 4 said they saw instances of sensitive information being discussed. Unquote.
Also, this from the Washington Post. Waltz and staff used Gmail for government communications, officials say. Trump's national security advisor is trying to manage his way out of a crisis, but new revelations about his team's operational security are piling up in the inbox. And I gotta say, you know what Fox News is covering today? They're covering the 3rd book about Joe Biden's age that's coming out this season.
Joe Biden's old? Really? He's old.
He was old last year too. And there's now there are 3 books out about this.
And I gotta ask myself in my quieter moments, on his worst day, do you suppose Joe Biden would have cut funding for Alzheimer's research, or Meals on Wheels, or libraries, or schools, or the arts?
Or prevented people from being able to call their Social Security office?
No, I don't think so. But, that's, people said, pretty much 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I don't know who to choose. I'll flip a coin. I'll vote for the guy who says he'll bring egg prices down the first day, because that's how fucking stupid I am. So, despite Carolyn Levitt catching some really big Sean Spicer energy,
this was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
At her mind-bogglingly awful press conference where she attacked reporters for asking questions, how dare you ask questions, and declared that the case has been closed. The case has, in fact, not been closed at all.
And given the constant rake stepping, it's not going to be closed.
No. Nope.
Now, this is my favorite story of the week. Speaking of incompetence, in other news, right-wing racist lunatic and 9/11 truther Laura Loomer is now deciding who lives and who dies at the White House. From NBC News, quote, President Donald Trump fired at least 3 National Security Council officials this week after far-right activist Laura Loomer met with the president and expressed dissatisfaction with some officials on his national security team. 3 people familiar with the matter told NBC News. Laura, lock my hands to the Twitter doorknob, Loomer. And it reminds me of the time that you and me, Driftglass, and Digby went to visit Obama at the White House.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
He asked us, now, which national security people should I fire today?
And we said Tommy Vitor, John Lovett, and John. No, that's wrong. It's wrong to me to even suggest that. That did not happen.
Same guy.
Yeah.
No, this didn't happen.
No. And by the way, we're not Laura Loomer. We're not the left.
No, and we're sane people who would tell him, we're not qualified to tell you who to hire and fire, Mr. President.
And none of us, to my knowledge, are the recipients of a botched plastic surgery that makes us look like aliens.
Well,
but
they're required. Women are required in that world to make their faces look like that. So, that's it. And the way they treat women is really just the talisman for how they do everything. Yeah.
Cruel, abusive, and expecting total subservience and total loyalty.
Right.
Yeah.
Objects. All right, Driftglass, we got to do a news roundup.
All right. Let's do that.
From the New York Times, as you know, Trump's trade war begins. Quote, yesterday, President Trump held up a chart at the White House Rose Garden. He laughed that not everyone in the audience could read it because the font was too small. But the content was anything but small. It detailed the tariffs he will impose on China, the European Union, Japan, India, and dozens of others. That chart started a trade war against the rest of the world. One analyst told the Times that the tariffs were shockingly high and a disaster, unquote.
Yeah. And those other countries and those other groups of countries are planning their own retaliatory strikes because they have no choice.
And they're joining with one another and excluding the United States from trade deals. They're going to trade with each other.
Yep.
Because what else can they do?
And Donald Trump pressured Senate Republicans to block a resolution nullifying his emergency declaration used to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. 4 Republican senators supported the bill. That's Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Rand Paul. Trump attacked them online, directing voters to get them to finally adhere to Republican values. You know?
Trump told aides and members of his cabinet that Elon Musk will soon leave his White House role, likely when his 130-day appointment ends in late May. Publicly, Trump said at some point he's going to be going back. He wants to. But inside the West Wing, officials said his chaotic presence is wearing thin. People are so pissed about it because it's fucking insane, said one insider, citing Musk's rogue decisions, poor coordination, and increasing political damage.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an albatross with $300 billion hanging around Trump's neck. And I say leave him right where he is. Leave him right where he is. Trump is considering a deal to avoid a TikTok ban that would let China's ByteDance keep control of the app's algorithm by leasing it to a U.S. spinoff. That's not the story. The story is the proposal would likely violate a federal law requiring a full break from foreign ownership, but Trump may certify it anyway because law schmaw, none of it matters.
The FDA, as we've known it, is finished, former Commissioner Robert Califf said. History will see this as a huge mistake. The restructuring is part of RFK Jr.'s plan to cut the HHS workforce by 25% and consolidate multiple agencies into a new entity called the Administration for a Healthy America. A CDC official, however, warned the agency will not be able to function. Let's be honest. One NIH staffer put it more bluntly. Despair, I think, is the only fitting word.
I just don't even have the words to describe how big a disaster this is, especially for long-term studies of really important things that will just be shelved and trashed. And this story is it's only a paragraph and a half long, but it's actually thousands of pages long, and it's a tragedy. It's a straight up tragedy. And now we are into Saddam Hussein territory. Mm-hmm. Now we are into our government behaving like Nazis.
The madman.
The madman. The Trump administration admitted that immigration officials mistakenly deported a legally protected Maryland resident to a gulag in El Salvador. Even though ICE acknowledged a 2019 court ruling barring Kilmar Abrego Garcia's deportation due to the risk of torture, they deported him anyway, calling it an administrative error. Do you remember how Brazil started, Blue Gal?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a typo. We bagged the right guy, the wrong guy.
Fly falling on the typewriter, yeah.
We typed him up and it was wrong, and we bagged him and we killed him because of a fucking typo. That's where we're at. Abrego Garcia, who has no U.S. criminal record and denies gang ties, was placed in El Salvador's Secot mega prison, where his wife later identified him in a government-released image. The Justice Department, however, won't seek his return, claiming U.S. courts lack jurisdiction, and they can't force El Salvador to release him. Of course they can. They're paying El Salvador to hold him. Tell them the payments stop and return him. We'll even fly him home, but they don't want to. Yeah. They'll let Andrew Tate into this country, but they will not undo the damage they've done to this poor man.
Again, how you treat women. It all goes back to that. Yep.
Quote, they're just washing their hands of this man, his lawyer said. The White House, meanwhile, doubled down. Of course they did, because you just keep lying, calling Abrego Garcia a brutal and vicious MS-13 gang member, despite no conviction or supporting evidence whatsoever.
And they're not going after MS-13 gang members. They're going after Venezuelan gang members.
Yeah, the whole Alien Act invocation was for this other gang, which is also
it's mass
full of
deportation with no thought behind it.
Well, and the part that I've heard repeated many, many times, but let's repeat it here one more time. It's no due process.
Right.
You do not.
Right.
You're not given an opportunity to prove that this is all bullshit or call a lawyer. You're just whisked out of the country or off to some black site somewhere. This is a problem for everybody. So let's suppose someone thought, I don't know, Melania Trump was an alien. I just black bagged her and took her to El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to stop that. You can be a U.S. citizen. They made a mistake. They black bagged a U.S. citizen and said that even if you're a U.S. citizen, you have no chance to fight this if they're not going to give you any due process or let you stand in front of a judge and prove your citizenship.
Yeah.
This is sending people off to concentration camps. This is two steps away from that. And they're doing it off-site to a third party, to a gulag in a third-party country, specifically so they wouldn't have to be answerable to the U.S. justice system.
Yep.
Just like Iraq. Just like fucking Iraq.
Yep. Yep. All right. And just to repeat, everybody, deep breath. Susan Crawford won big in Wisconsin and sent Elon Musk back to Washington crying like a baby. And Democrats won in counties and townships in Illinois where they should not have won, because these are white flight Republican counties.
Yep.
So things are changing and people are upset. And whether they're upset about their own personal greediness, and, I don't think wanting your Social Security to be stable is greedy, frankly. But if they're finally scared enough to see that this is going to affect me personally, and they're willing to vote accordingly, that is progress. And
getting back, just rounding it back to Cory Booker. The idea, the up in arms, why aren't Democrats doing it? Why aren't Democrats stopping this? Because they can't.
They can't.
Because the people who
But they can knock down a Confederate monument, Driftglass.
Yes, that's true. I love that one. Yeah.
We love that one.
Because
Cory Booker knocked down a Confederate monument.
He beat Strom Thurmond's record, and therefore he knocked down a Confederate monument. Way to go.
Way to go.
But the reason that he can't do anything, and he said that very clearly in his speech, and it broke his heart that he couldn't do anything, that he was powerless to do anything but stand there and talk, is because Republican voters and a bunch of people who are wishy-washy, centrist, do nothing, I'm not sure what to do, either stayed home or voted for Donald Trump when they should have fucking well known better. They voted to take the power out of Cory Booker's hands to do anything. Right. They voted to strip Democrats of any power to do anything. So if you look at what's going on in Congress, Republicans are getting everything they want because Republicans were given the power to do that by voters. Now, Illinois, voters are giving a different answer to that question. They're saying, no. We're going to start handing even more power. We have a supermajority in Illinois. Yeah. But that's not enough because there's still a few Republicans that are a few rocks here. And now you have people saying,
and if you don't want your township run by Republicans, that's people you know personally.
Yep.
And you booted them out.
Yep. Because their brand is so filthy. It's so broken.
Their brand is filthy. Yep. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Pinky. Pinky is 16 years old and very affectionate. She's become very clingy as she ages, follows everywhere as good companion cats do. And of course, Pinky eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your cat will stay right beside you and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
You can visit Pinky at our Patreon page or website. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We do love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
And we're having some wild weather here. It's getting cold, getting warm, getting cold. Hail. Your dad had hail this morning. Is that right?
Pittsburgh. He had
hail.
Exploding hail. Yeah.
So we're going to need some espresso-based beverages to keep us warm until summer actually kicks in. So don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, I'm losing my words now, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. If you can spare $5 a month or more, please spare $5 a month or more at patreon.com/proleftpod. Please also share our show on social media if you can. And if you can, tell someone. We met someone today, a friend of middle child,
Yes.
who loves our podcast. And who
we
said,
gave her a bumper sticker.
and who said, my mom is a huge fan of yours. Do you know how awesome that makes us feel? That we've indoctrinated the youth, that we're corrupting the minds of the youth, and we're getting to their parents as well. This
high
is
school
winning.
friend of middle child came over. Yeah.
Excellent. So our plan is working. We could use your help in making it spread a little further. By the way, thank you to Brad Friedman and Digby and Desi for having me on the air yesterday. And thank you,
and that's
Bob
up at our Patreon page. There's a link at our Patreon page to that podcast.
And thank you
we'll
in
be
advance.
on Bob Cesca next week.
Yeah, thank you in advance to Bob Cesca for next week. So we really are kind of doing something like this every day between your knitting podcast or researching this stuff or correcting it or responding, corresponding. So this really is our job. Now, thank you for doing that. We really do appreciate all the information that comes in and all the good wishes.
Hey, Drift Class, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are now napping, and they left a wake-up call for November of 2026.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.